Saturday night, the UFC hits the Windy City as Chicago's United Center plays host to UFC 238. Two titles on the line. We see Henry Cejudo take on Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight championship, and then the flyweight title is on the line as Valentina Shevchenko defends against Jessica Evil Eye. Hey, everybody, I'm TJ DeSantis from Between Rounds Radio here on Cappers Direct. I appreciate you joining us. If at any time you want more MMA coverage, we encourage you to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Between Rounds. You can catch myself and the man joining me today. It is Jeff Sherwood. If you know anything about mixed martial arts or look up a fighter's record, you have Jeff to thank because he invented, well, kind of the Fight Finder. He's the founder of Sherdog.com. Do you just take credit for the Fight Finder even though it was someone else's idea and you said it was a dumb idea?
If Dana takes credit for building the octagon, I'll take credit for everything.
Perfect. Why not? It's just easier that way. Like, you know, we can blame you for everything. And
did you do this? Yes.
Yeah. Why not? And if anything goes wrong, it's all your fault still. Like, I'm missing 700 wins for my Fight Finder page.
Right. Just the wins.
Right. Exactly. Never a loss. Henry Cejudo, he's riding high on a couple of wins, victorious over Demetrius Johnson. Obviously, that earned him the UFC's flyweight title. And then he defeated former bantamweight king TJ Dillashaw, but it was at 125 pounds. It's hard to remember that Henry Cejudo isn't already the bantamweight champion, Jeff. He last fought the former bantamweight champion, who was the champion at the time, but as I mentioned, it was at 125 pounds. But tonight, or Saturday night, rather, the bantamweight title will be on the line when Cejudo takes on Marlon Moraes. But both are challengers. Don't end up calling Henry Cejudo the champion by accident, because technically at 135, he's not.
Yeah, it's hard to remember lots of details these days. I mean, people going up and down in weight classes, people wanting money fights, people, being champs, and people testing positive. Like, your mind could only take so much, not to mention a fight every weekend. A fight card every weekend.
Can we please stop calling double champions the champ? Because it makes us all sound like babies. champ. Like, I don't know how to speak. You know what I mean? Dad.
Right.
Champ.
It is a little weird. But I mean, what else are you going to call them?
I don't know. A two division champion? Belts? Yeah, 2-division champion works.
Well, that's a little long.
I mean,
champ's much easier.
People are very impatient.
I don't know who came up with that.
Daniel Cormier.
Is he the one that invented that? Or is he just taking credit for it?
I think it's Dana. Dana invented it. Let's go with Dana.
Yeah.
No,
I believe it. Now. It is a stupid idea. I'll never say that again.
Right.
Just kidding.
The other title on the line, the women's flyweight championship, Valentina Shevchenko takes on Jessica Eye. Exciting fight there. Shevchenko seems to be far and away above, really everyone in that 125-pound division. But Jessica Eye's on a nice run. 3 fights in a row she's won since moving to 125 pounds. Let's start there. Jessica Eye, pretty big underdog. We just saw a huge upset in boxing last weekend. Upsets happen all the time in sports. If you go back to the last UFC, Jeff, it was a night of underdogs. But Jessica Eye is not even fair calling her an underdog in this fight. Basically, people are giving her an Ice Cube's chance in hell, which I don't think is necessarily all that fair, but it is more maybe complimentary of the skills of Valentina Shevchenko.
Well, I mean, it seems so long ago that she was on a 4-fight losing streak, right? I mean, that's the good and the bad things about MMA is people forget quickly. We just talked about that. There's so much going on. And, so she lost 4 in a row and people were like, oh man, Jessica, I might be done. And then all of a sudden, so she wins 3 in a row. And now we forgot the 4 losses in a row, right?
Yeah.
But they're still not giving her too much credit with the odds and everything. But I think that's the smart thing to do. I mean, people that make lines for a living, most of the time they're pretty damn smart.
Right.
So
there's a reason they win money. There's a reason Vegas has all the money, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a reason why your bookie takes all your money.
Right.
He has smart people making lines. So, I mean, we could say, yeah, it might be a little over exaggerated a little bit, but is it? I mean, really, when you look down Jessica I's, record for the last 3-4 years, it's like, yeah, she probably is going to lose this fight, but Jessica I's going to put up a good fight,
Yeah.
but she's probably going to lose in the end.
Right. By the way, if you are someone who likes to bet fights, you should head over to cappersdirect.com, get their picks for this weekend's event. $20. That's all it takes to get their picks for this upcoming UFC 238 card. A nice 30% off deal going on, mainly because we came over and are doing some shows for them. So check out the Between Round Special, we'll call it, cappersdirect.com. Just $20 gets you their picks this weekend. Well, $19.99 to be fair.
Not too bad.
No, right?
I used to pay a lot more than that back in the day,
Man.
TJ, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, don't worry.
The guy had a weird accent, used to call and yell at me.
Don't worry. You can give me $20 and I'll give you my picks too. I don't know if you'll win, but I'll give you my picks for $20. Sure. What?
Yeah, no, I've seen your picks.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm cool. Mine are bad enough by myself. So,
Marlon Moraes and Henry Cejudo, that is our main event. I really don't know what to make of Henry Cejudo right now. Like, I want him to be the flyweight king, with him beating Demetrius Johnson and Mighty Mouse leaving the division. It seems like we have a lot more fights that are interesting and exciting at 125, but he's dead set on becoming the double champ. I'm going to just leave it there. I'm not going to say the word. I can't do it.
Good job.
He wants the bantamweight title. Hard to argue with him, Jeff. I mean, when you look at the money that is involved at bantamweight, there's a little bit more money involved, I think, there than at 125. Maybe not. I don't know, but it feels like there is, which is arguably why he wants to go up and capture that title. And then there's a lot of talk, too, about the flyweight division as a whole maybe just going away. I don't want that to happen. Part of me feels like I need to cheer for Marlon Moraes, not just because the division may go away, but what is that going to do to a lot of fighters at 125 pounds? The Alex Perez's of the world. There's plenty of fighters at 125 that I think deserve to have a belt atop their division. And if Henry Cejudo beats Marlon Moraes coming up on Saturday night, I feel like we're one step closer to flyweights being a thing of the past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really matters the outcome of this fight. I think we are looking at that division going away. I think everyone is just getting ready for that. I mean, they just made some cuts, and they cut a couple of those guys that were exciting fighters, but they're just cutting, they're like cutting the division down and cutting it down. I think, you bring up somebody like Alex Perez, who's a little younger. You bring up some of these other guys. I think they're just gonna all the guys that the UFC really wants to stick around, they're gonna move up in weight class. And like you said, every time you make a jump up in weight, the money is a little better. So, by the end of Marlon's career, I expect him to be fighting heavyweight.
Right. I mean, you might as well get that paper, right?
Joke, but
come on, get that paper.
Right. Yeah. But I think a lot of these guys are already working. I think the writing's on the wall. I think probably the word inside, if you're inside talking to these managers and guys like that, they probably know, they've probably already let their fighters know, like, hey, let's start packing on a little muscle, because we're going to get ready to fight up at the next weight class.
Well, we'll see what happens.
That's my guess.
We'll see what happens on Saturday night. Henry Cejudo, Marlon Moraes, bantamweight title on the line. One fight that is not a title fight, feels like it's a title fight. I mean, heck, his last fight was for a title, and he didn't lose. It was an interim belt. Tony Ferguson, he returns to take on Donald Cowboy Cerrone, a matchup at 155 pounds. Jeff, looking at this fight, I mean, we can make all the jokes about Tony Ferguson's title just evaporating overnight. Maybe it wasn't a title he should have been fighting for to begin with. But that said, the real sort of victim in this fight not being a title fight, I think, are the fans, or maybe even the fighter that could be down after 3 rounds. This should be a 5-round fight. It's a title eliminator, to say the least. You can't get a more elite level fight talent-wise at 155 pounds without being for a UFC title. But unfortunately for Ferguson and Cerrone. There are two champions atop the 155-pound division, and unfortunately for them as well, should this not be settled in 15 minutes, they're not going to get the extra 10 in championship rounds to settle this one.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've been, thinking about, and I totally agree with you. It should be this should be a 5-round fight. The thing is, I'm trying to figure out who benefits from a 3-round fight out of these guys, and who would benefit out of a 5-round fight. And I can't really answer that question. I'm not sure. I think I'm leaning towards Cerrone benefiting from a 3-round fight.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Tony Ferguson has no issues being on his back. If you end up on your back in all 3 rounds, even if you're not in trouble, to a lot of people, you're losing the fight.
Right.
And we've seen Tony Ferguson go to his back, because he doesn't care. He feels safe there, and he feels like maybe he can even pull a submission out. I think that could possibly hurt him in this fight, with it only being 3 rounds.
Another reason that I think it may benefit Donald Cerrone more than Tony Ferguson that it's a 15-minute fight is Tony Ferguson gets hit. He always gets hit. Sometimes he gets dropped. He gets rocked. And when you only have 15 minutes, a knockdown, it goes in an even longer way. I mean, knockdowns are really big, don't get me wrong, but when you drop a round in a 3-round fight, you essentially have to be perfect the rest of the way, where a 5-round championship fight, I'm not suggesting that you be willy-nilly with dropping rounds, but there's more room for error. You can come back and still be confident that you earned a decision, but I don't know. Another thing too, it's interesting for me looking at this fight stylistically. When you look at Donald Cerrone, he has one of the more underrated ground games in all the lightweight division. I mean, most of his wins come by way of submission, but he's kind of known and remembered about as a striker. Looking at Tony Ferguson, he's going to have to be that striker. He's not going to be able to match jiu-jitsu wits, grapple for grapple, position for position over the course of 15 minutes. I'm not saying that's really an indicator on which way to lean, but I think when it comes down to the two guys having to, evolve and adapt over time, I think the fire is going to be underneath Donald Cerrone to evolve and pull away in this fight. And I think he's going to have to do so based on his kickboxing background. And we'll see what happens. But in a lot of ways, for Donald Cerrone being a very well-rounded mixed martial artist, I think he needs to make this more old school and go, into this fight thinking that he's the striker taking on a grappler.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tony Ferguson's grappling is phenomenal as well. So I expect it to be more of a kickboxing. Now we need to remember as well, we said that we think the 3 rounds benefits Donald Cerrone, but we have to remember Donald Cerrone starts a little bit slow. I mean, he's been getting better at that, but typically in his career, Donald Cerrone has started slow. So that's the reason that's kind of tying me up a little bit about who really has the benefit of a 3-round fight. But I don't know. This is one of those fights that you don't look at and be like, oh, this guy's going to win this fight,
right?
Which makes it a good fight because you're not really sure going into the fight, I have a real strong feeling one way or the other. You're like, damn, I could see either one of these guys winning this fight.
I really completely agree. And looking at this fight card compared to the one that's coming up next month, UFC 239, that's the one in Vegas, takes place during International Fight Week. It's a stacked card. I mean, don't get me wrong, John Jones is on it, but I feel like this card at the beginning of June packs a pretty good punch and kind of rivals that UFC 239 card. This is a card, no hyperbole. I'm not getting money from the UFC when I say make sure your ESPN Plus subscription is up to date, but you're going to have to be in front of your TV from fight one, because if not every fight, every other fight is one that is going to have impact on the division and rankings. And man, I don't know. I just can't remember a fight card this good pretty much all year. I think this might be the best card on paper, Jeff, for the UFC here in 2019.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you just look down the card, and it's sprinkled with all these great fights. I mean, Aljamain Sterling against Pedro Munoz. I mean, who's not going to love that fight? I
Title
mean, that's a
eliminator,
great
maybe,
fight.
right? Like, I mean, these guys could get the
Seriously, it's
winner.
got to be, right?
Yeah.
Right. And they should. I mean, that doesn't always mean everything, but they should.
Right.
Just a lot of great fights. Jimmy Rivera, Peter Yan. We already talked about the top 3 fights. Ricardo Lamas coming back against Calvin. Lots of good fights. Well, Angela Hill coming back again quickly.
You haven't even mentioned this one at 115 pounds. Tatiana Suarez takes on Nina Ansaroff. Yes. I'm not saying that's a title eliminator, but it may as well be. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, what Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard are going to do with the winner of that fight, but I got to believe that the winner of that sets himself apart from the rest of the division and is knocking on the door at an opportunity to take on the new champ.
Right. And there's 2. So they throw the heavyweight fight in there, right? Tai Tuivasa against Blagoy Ivanov. I get it. Everyone loves heavyweights, right? We just saw 2 heavyweights in boxing, and the underdog knocked out the killer, right?
Right.
And everyone lost their mind. I mean, that's the thing. We still, no matter what, as fight fans, as fans that love violence, we'd like the big guys no matter what. So I understand them throwing this card. I mean, that fight on there, Bevon Lewis against Darren Stewart. Like, if you want to possibly put this card as to maybe one of the best cards ever, definitely in a long time, depending on how it works out, sure. Right? But if you remove those 2 fights and made a 10-fight card, it might be perfect. As long as the stars aligned, all the fighters go in there, do what they're going to do. We see knockout submissions, TKOs, all this exciting stuff. This is the type of card that after you watch it, you could be like, man, I'm glad I watched that. That was one of the best cards I've seen.
The only thing
not saying that it won't be with those 2 fights, right. But I could see skipping those 2 fights.
We need to take a breath, at one point or another, and maybe run to the bathroom or refill the drink. So, no disrespect to those
right.
guys.
But you're not going to do that during a heavyweight fight because you're hoping that somebody gets pasted, right?
Right. And also, too, if you are going to refill the drink when Tai Tuivasa's fighting, I think that means you have to fill a boot. I think that's
put
what
it in your shoe.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
No, thank you.
Drink it out of your shoe. That's disgusting.
Yeah. My only fear about this fight card is kind of what you said, that the expectations may be so high that how could it really live up to those expectations? But when Tony Ferguson and Donald Cerrone are fighting, and that's not even the co-main event, odds are it's a pretty damn good fight card. So we'll see what happens. And we encourage you to check out all of our stuff, breaking it down. Roundtable headed your way on patreon.com/between rounds. And then, unfortunately, not going to be on video this week on Cappers Direct, but we will be live on Between Rounds for Beatdown After the Bell. Jeff, I appreciate you previewing this card with me. Anything you want to tell the people over at Cappers Direct? Follow you on Twitter, maybe?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter, the Sure Doggy.
There you go.
I'm there.
And at Between Rounds.
Don't push me on the gambling too much. No. Sorry. I walked all over you, but I just wanted to get that out there.
You've been walking all over me for years. I've worked for you for far too long.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't quite done, so technically I could say you started before I was finished, but maybe I paused.
You're the boss. Why not? You're the boss. All right. He's Jeff Sherwood. I'm TJ DeSantis. We'll see you over at Between Rounds.